The heart of the forgotten village. The night air was cold, and the wind whistled through the empty streets, carrying with it the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. Captain Ethan Calloway stepped off the bus, his boots crunching against the gravel, and he looked at the village before him. The place that had once been his home now stood quiet and unfamiliar, its silhouette etched against a moonless sky. His heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and dread. It had been 7 long years since he'd left for the war, and everything had changed. The small rural community, tucked away in a secluded valley, was no longer the lively, bustling place of his childhood memories. The houses that lined the streets seemed derelict, their windows boarded up, the paint peeling away like layers of forgotten history. The cobblestone roads, which had once been well-worn by the feet of villagers, were now cracked and overgrown with weeds. A cold shiver ran down his spine, not from the chill of the night air, but from the haunting realization that nothing was the same. Ethan was a soldier, once a proud defender of his country, and his return should have been a moment of victory. But as he stood there, looking at the village that had shaped him, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the years bearing down on him. He had left behind more than just the comforts of home. He had left behind love, friendship, and a promise to never forget the place that had raised him. But now, all he felt was a strange sense of loss. The village had changed, yes, but so had he. The man who had once walked these streets with confidence and purpose was no longer the same. He was a man hardened by war, a man who had witnessed the brutality of life and death, a man who had seen friends fall in battle and had been forced to bury parts of his soul along with them. As he walked deeper into the village, the silence around him became oppressive. He could hear the faint rustling of leaves in the trees, the soft chirping of crickets, but there were no voices, no laughter, no sounds of life. He passed by the familiar landmarks, the old church where he had attended services as a child, the bakery where his mother used to buy fresh bread every morning, the park where he had first kissed Emily. He paused for a moment, the memory of her smile flooding his mind. Emily. She had been the love of his life, his reason for everything. He had promised her that he would return, but the war had taken too much from him. He had lost contact with her, and in the chaos of battle, he had forgotten what it felt like to have her in his arms. But now he was back. He had kept his promise, and he would find her, even if it meant searching every inch of this forsaken village. His footsteps quickened as he moved toward the town square, the place where the annual festivals used to be held. As a child, he had always looked forward to the celebration, the music, the dancing, and the bright lights that illuminated the square. But now, the square was empty, the stage where the band once played reduced to rubble. The benches were overturned, and the fountain that had once been a symbol of life and joy was dry, its stone basin cracked and broken. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. Ethan's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, he thought his mind was playing tricks on him. But no, this was real. A woman, her silhouette outlined by the dim light of a distant lamppost, stood in the middle of the square, staring at him with wide eyes. "Ethan?" Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a knife. He blinked, unable to believe his eyes. It was Emily. She was standing right in front of him, her face pale, her hair tangled by the wind. The years had not been kind to her, but there was no mistaking her. He had known her smile, the way her eyes sparkled when she was happy, the way she held herself with quiet strength. But now, there was something different about her. A sadness, a fear, lingered in her gaze. "Emily," he breathed, his voice hoarse. "Is it really you?" She nodded, her lips trembling. "I didn't know if you'd ever come back. I thought you'd forgotten about me." "I could never forget you," Ethan said, stepping closer. "But what happened? Where is everyone? What happened to the village?" Emily hesitated, her eyes flickering toward the darkened streets. "It's not the same. It hasn't been the same since you left." Her voice faltered, and she looked away, as if afraid to speak the truth. "The village is cursed." Ethan frowned. "Cursed?" "Yes," Emily whispered, her eyes filled with fear. "There was an accident, a tragedy, something that changed everything. People started disappearing one by one, and then strange things began happening. No one knew what was going on, but everyone started to feel it. The air grew colder, the nights darker, and the shadows, they began to move." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He had heard rumors of strange happenings in the village while he was stationed overseas, but he hadn't believed them. Now, standing in front of Emily, he could see the terror in her eyes. This was no ordinary village anymore. "What happened to you, Emily?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Why didn't you leave?" "I couldn't," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I couldn't leave because I never stopped waiting for you. I thought you would come back, but now I see that it's too late." Ethan took a step forward, reaching out to touch her arm, but as his fingers brushed against her skin, he felt an icy chill, like death itself was clinging to her. He jerked his hand back, startled. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice rising in panic. "Emily, tell me what's happening. We can fix this. We can leave together, we..." Before he could finish, a low growl echoed through the darkness. Ethan turned sharply, his military instincts kicking in. The air shifted, and from the depths of the shadows, something emerged. Something that should not have existed. Its eyes glowed like fiery embers, its body twisted and contorted in unnatural shapes, and its presence exuded a malevolent energy that made Ethan's blood run cold. Emily screamed, her hands clutching at Ethan's arm as she tried to pull him back. But Ethan was rooted to the spot, unable to move, unable to comprehend what was happening. The creature, if it could even be called that, lurked closer, its clawed feet scraping against the cobblestone ground as it advanced. "No," Emily gasped, her voice trembling. "It's not supposed to be here. It's the curse that destroyed everything." The creature's eyes locked onto Ethan, and for a moment, he felt as though the world had come to a halt. Time itself seemed to freeze as he stared at the dark entity before him, the weight of his own past and the pain of everything he had lost crashing down on him. He had returned to this village, seeking the life he once knew, the love he had lost. But now, he was faced with a reality far darker than he could have ever imagined. And yet, as the creature loomed over him, Ethan's mind was clear. There was one thing he knew, one thing that gave him the strength to fight. No matter how much time had passed, no matter how much had changed, he was still connected to this place, to these people. His love for Emily, for the village, had never faded. The memories, the bonds, the deep-rooted sense of belonging, these things were stronger than the curse, stronger than the darkness that sought to consume them. With a sudden surge of energy, Ethan grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her toward the old church, the one place he knew still held a flicker of life. The doors creaked open as they rushed inside, the faint light of a candle flickering in the corner of the room. Emily collapsed onto the pew, gasping for breath, her eyes wide with fear. "We're not alone," she whispered, her voice shaking. "There's more of them out there." Ethan nodded, his heart racing. But he wasn't afraid. He had fought battles before, real battles, where the odds were stacked against him. This was no different. They would fight, and they would survive. They had to. "You're not alone either," Ethan said softly. "I'm here now. I'll never leave you again." The candle flickered one last time before burning out completely, plunging them into darkness. But as the night deepened, a new hope began to grow in the hearts of Ethan and Emily, for they knew that no matter how many monsters lurked in the shadows, no matter how many curses bound the land, their love, true and unbreakable, would be the light that would guide them through the darkness. And in that moment, they realized that the village may have changed, the world may have turned upside down, but love, memories, and the spirit of home would always remain. As they stood together in the quiet darkness, the wind howled outside, but inside, they were safe. For the heart of the forgotten village had not abandoned them, and neither would they ever abandon each other. The curse had not won.
And neither would they.
Whispering echoes.